Okay. Howdy, guys. I figured today we'd kind of talk about the wrecking yard. Um, uh, a lot of shenanigans happened at the wrecking yard. And when you're working with the characters that I was, a lot of shenanigans happened. Yeah. Starts off simple enough. But basically, we start at 9 and usually work to 5. Sometimes a little later, sometimes a little earlier. And there's a few things that about the wrecking yard that I don't know the best way to put them. Probably, let me move you a little closer. Okay, I like that better. Anyways, one of the things about the wrecking yard is I spent almost as many nights there as I did at home. Mostly because it was closer to the dairy, slaughterhouse, gas station. I didn't have to travel the extra 28 miles, something like that, to work in the morning. Because if I was going to the dairy, it started way early. So if I knew what I was doing the next day, then I stayed at the wrecking yard. But if I wasn't needed anywhere, I was most likely going to be at the wrecking yard. Unless I had a girlfriend. If I had a girlfriend at the time, then my days off were spent with them. Anyways, but I worked with Johnny G and Blank Frank at the wrecking yard. And I think I've told you before, they were big boys. And they weren't boys. I can't say that. They're big men. Okay. And so that led to, kind of crazy shenanigans. Like, we did what we called a cab toss. If somebody needed a cab for a pickup, then we'd go down into the field and find one that was suitable for them, the best one, condition wise, and we'd drag it up to the barn, and we'd get it all ready for separation. Generally, we had to take the whole front clip off, and we'd take the bed off. Mostly, we took the bed off so we wouldn't damage the cab or the bed. But and then we'd wrap a strap around it, and we'd lift that thing about probably 2 or 3 feet off the ground, and then we cut the bolts. And we got to sit inside while because when that busted loose, straps and all that, man, it was like a pogo stick in there. I mean, you got bounced all around, thrown to one side or the other. It was entertainment. I mean, in a world of being, lack of entertainment. I mean, we did whatever we could. because there was nothing to do. But anyways, the cab toss was quite fun. We really enjoyed that. Uh, I told you about High Pockets there. Um, he was the only person close to my age. He was a couple of years older than me. And I'm not sure if I mentioned why we called him High Pockets. Because he wore hand-me-down clothes, mostly from his dad. And the pants fit him. He had to put the belt right here, to hold up his trousers. So that put his pockets right here. So that's why we called him High Pockets. And he'd come up and hang around at the wrecking yard, because he had nothing to do. And there wasn't very often a need for all three of us up there. So it was either me or one of the other guys, or I'd just come up on my day off and just hang. Because, it was, pretty much kind of, I didn't have very many days off. And at least up there, I could get work done on personal vehicles. Nothing fancy, if like the little Plymouth Valiant I told you about. When we got that, um, somebody had taken the rear end out of it for some reason or another. So I got it and I put a new rear end in it and I drove the crap out of it. I mean, it was a fun little car. The Comet, the transmission was out of it. So, and I think it had a 3 on the tree when I got it. So I just put a little 4-speed in it, cut a hole in the floor, put a little 4-speed in her. And, kind of things like that, like we'd go at the dump, people would go down there and they'd have these big old cars that, because of gas crunch, you're ration gas, you only get so much gas a day. And these big cars, when you got to drive 20 miles, to get your groceries, and a round trip was 40, and these cars are getting 10 miles at a gallon, people, that was, so anyways, they just take them down to the dump, put the title on in a dash, put a rock on the title, leave keys in it. They generally almost always took the battery and drain the gas out of it. And so anytime I was driving past the dump, if I was in a car, I always carried an extra battery and 5 gallons of gas, because I didn't have to worry about the gas crunch, because we had our gas delivered to the farm. So I'd go get gas anytime I wanted. And diesel too, but there wasn't that big a call for diesel. Mostly the tractors just ran on diesel. But anyway, so we were always getting these kind of odd, unique cars, like the big old Pontiac Catalinas, and all years of those, and the Oldsmobiles, I mean, we had, and the Cadillacs, believe it or not, Cadillacs, the Coupe de Villes, man, those things there, they were, yeah. And so if I was going by in the tow truck, I'd just swing in if there was a car there. Sometimes there'd be multiple cars there. And if there was a couple cars there, I'd take the one I wanted the most and take it up to the wrecking yard and leave it. And if they came with titles, like they mostly did, right, I could just put it in the field someplace, wherever I could fit it. Mostly, we try to have our rigs organized. And then I'd go back. If the other car was there, I'd take it. If it wasn't, oh well. And But the little Pintos, Comets, Mavericks, um, the littler vehicles like that, uh, we'd get them in, we'd fix them, whatever was wrong with them, and we'd sell them because or we'd trade them for give people so much for their big cars, and you know and stuff like that. Um, and so there's always doings at the wrecking yard. Always something going on. Somebody needed something, or we had parts to fix a car, so we'd fix a car. Um, and but it offered a lot of opportunities, you know, like uh, the Firebird I got from Miss Cameltoe there. Um, I was able to swipe, get a 400 um, out of a car and put it in there, turn an automatic car into a 4-speed car. So I made a lot of nice little cars, right? Like the Firebird, I did keep for a while, end up trading it. The two Tempest, there was a Mexican kid there named, God, I can't remember his name, Paxton or Patton, something like that. Anyways, he wanted the Tempest and the 64s. So I talked to Grandpa about it and whatnot. And he was an okay kid. He worked hard, just got married, was working at the mill. And so we agreed on a price for both of them. But we told them you can come up and work on them here at the place, but until they're paid off, you can't have them. Because we didn't want to be the assholes that go take somebody's vehicle because they don't pay for it, or anything like that. You know, and I mean, there was people they had hard times. They couldn't afford to get their rig fixed, so sometimes it all depends upon how bad you know their rig was that needed repairs. Sometimes it was easier just to give them one of the old junkers that we had up there. I mean, they were good cars, they weren't junk, but they were just ones that we picked up at the dump that nobody wanted because they couldn't afford the mileage. Not that these people could afford the mileage much, but at least they had transportation, and in the middle of nowhere, transportation is transportation. So we did a lot of that stuff. And um, the way the wrecking yard was, um, it, it wasn't really a narrow road. There was a lot of cutoffs, um, but there, there was a lot of one lane stretches, but it was pretty clear. So if you seen somebody coming and you were by a cutoff, you could pull off into there. Um, if I was towing a vehicle, I just stopped right by the cutoff, so they'd have to go around me, but they could use the cutoff. And you know, uh, and then I can you up. But we had a car crusher, this company, I can't remember the name of it. It would come in, all depends, if we had a bottom lot, it was probably maybe 2 acres, 2, 3 acres somewhere. It wasn't a very big spot, but it was a nice flat spot. So what we would do is when the car was pretty much a carcass, nothing left, mostly the big ones, we'd tow it down there and leave it, you know. And when we got it down there, we'd cut out whatever parts we wanted, mostly just rear ends, because those were something that was always seemed to be in demand. And then we just leave them down there. And when we got quite a few of them, we'd just, um, Grandpa, he bought this old loader. It was he bought it from the mill, and it had the forks on it for logs, to unload log trucks, stuff like that. And he got a hold of one of them, and we fixed it up, and we got it running. And when the time came, we get too many cars down on the landing down there. We go down there and start stacking them up on top of each other, and when we had enough, we would call the guy, and he'd make an appointment to come up. Mostly it was in the spring, early summer, when he'd do that. So we had, pretty much all summer and all winter to stack cars down there. And we got rid of a lot of the big cars that way because nobody wanted them. Nowadays, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and these cars that we were, just taking motors, trannies, rear ends out of, and dropping them down there, uh, to be crushed. Well, there was a lot of tires involved. You guys know that 4 tires, per car, and if they were any good, we'd generally separate them from a rim and take them down to the gas station, because that's when you could buy used tires. Nobody cared. You can buy recap tires. Nobody cared. So if they were good tires, we'd just take them off the rims and throw the rims in one of the cars that we are going to haul off down there. But if the tires were bad, and this was before they didn't dock you for the rubber being on them either. So what we do is we just go right out in the yard there a little bit, and we it was we just send the tires right over the bank and watch them roll down and hit the cars down below. We like the ones that held air because those things would get zipping, and they'd hit the cars and they'd bounce 20, 30 feet in the air. It was cool. It was, entertainment. What the hell? But we wouldn't just, we wouldn't do just, we'd have a tire. We'd let them build up, and then we'd paint them, different colors. And then we'd have tire races, and we'd send them off over the hill. And I remember I got this little 13-inch tire, and that thing was smooth as silk. I mean, it they ran it. It didn't show any cords, but they ran it till there was absolutely no tread left on this rim and tire. And so I called him Baldy from the Harlan Globetrotters, and that that made me money. That little tire. That's of all crazy things, I mean, we go out there, hey, I bet you $1 my tire gets down there faster. And we had a, stopwatch, and when they hit the cars down below, that's when you stopped. Some of them, if they went off to the side, you lost till they hit the cars. But a little Baldy there, boy, that thing had just sailed down the hill. Man, it just tracked just like it just boom hit those cars. Man, I swear to God, it'd go 40 feet in the air. That was just a fun little tire. And I'd go down and grab it, bring it back up the hill. That was my secret weapon. And because it wasn't just me and Johnny G, like I said, High Pockets come up. A lot of people come up, and we had made a sign, tire races, and we had a stack of tires in front of the place, and people would come up, and see that what's that about, So we'd tell them, oh, so 9 times out of 10 they go grab the biggest tire in the pile, and now I'd grab my little Baldy there, and they'd all, yeah, okay, yeah, ready, yeah, time, boom, okay, this time. Then we, 3 or 4 people run them at the same time, and I'd run the little Baldy there, and it'd be down there in seconds. You know, I mean, it would, because I don't know why that thing just flew so well, but it just, never got beat. Well, until um, one day I sent it down there, and I guess it was hit a sharp part of the car. Maybe, yeah. Finally, cords broke too many times from hitting the vehicles. I don't know, but one day it popped, so that kind of bummed me out. But no, that was entertainment factor. I mean, you gotta file pretty much everything. Stupid shenanigans that we did is entertainment, and and we always trying to come up with different crazy things. But there are a lot of times when, like I said, one of my primary jobs was, driving a tow truck, either just going rescuing somebody, you know, picking their car up at their house, bringing it to the shop to be worked on, whatever was needed. Um, and so it was a lot of fun there. And something that, since I spent so much time there, and like I said, sometimes it was just easier for me just to spend the night there. And so uh, I made me a cottonseed bed up at the wrecking yard. And the only one who ever knew about it, and Johnny G and Blank Frank, and they knew what kind of trouble I had with my one in the barn, so they kept their mouths shut about it. And they had no reason to use it. So the only one ever used it was me and uh, you know Miss Camel Toe. She was the only one I ever brought, let her in on that secret. Let anybody in on that secret. Um, but we had a lot of good times up there. A lot of work went on, and um, we had quite the, like I said, Johnny G there. He loved those old pickups, uh, and he worked there, so he got a hell of a discount on the parts. But uh, we couldn't just give him the parts, because then shit would start disappearing. And so before he took a part, he always had to clear it with Grandpa. And they'd settle on a price for it, and which wasn't very much, because he was a good guy. But it was just, it was just the principle of things. And Blank Frank, he didn't care what he drove. I mean, he'd get all excited if he stopped by the dump and there was a car there, and he'd get all excited over that. And he'd drive that, and you know, and then we had, like the county fair, demolition derby every year. So we'd get a car, out of the, they're running the demolition derby. And back then, things were simple, when it comes to demolition derbies, you know, uh, no glass, and that was pretty much the only rule. Had to have a working seatbelt, and helmets were optional. It wasn't mandatory, but it was a smart idea to have one. Um, those old cars back then, man, they were built tough. I mean, there was this car, called it the Mud Shark. It was Chrysler, I think. The one with the headlights slanted like that, and might have been a Plymouth. I don't know. Somebody, if they know, they'll correct me. Anyways, um, that ugly, car. I mean, I ran that car 3 years in a row in it, um, and got at least second place every year. I ran that car. I mean, that car was tough. I mean, I come around the corner one time. I was driving it, come around the corner, and there was a truck in the road, and so I had to swerve to miss him. Well, I overcompensated for it, and I hit the rock wall, yeah, on the bank, and it stopped me fucking cold, dead in my tracks. And I get out. I'm expecting I'm gonna have to go get the tow truck to um, tow that thing home. Yeah, I get out, and the chrome bezel around the headlight was the only thing that dented on that car. I couldn't believe it. I mean, that was a tough car. And like I said, I started running it. I ran it in the demolition derbies, and it was just all around a tough car. Um, I think I finally ended up blowing motor up in it, but we got some cool cars come through the wrecking yard, like the I can't remember 61 or 62 Canalinas. Had the 389 in them, I think. They had 4 barrels, high compression motors, run like a scalded ass ape. You know, those are good cars. I really like them. I like those fins that they had on the back with the 2 round headlights right there. That was a good looking rear end. You know, it's just like the old what the Chevys, the 59s. You know, they had those big old teardrop taillights. You know, later on, my first wife, when we were married, the car wouldn't start, and she she called me up, and so I asked her. I said, "Well, where are you parked at?" She goes, "I'm parked next to a stoned vampire." I said, "What? What the hell's a stoned vampire? You know, that don't make no sense." So I go to where she said she was at, and parked right beside her was an old '59 El Camino. I never forgot that. And to this day, that's what I refer to those as a stone vampire. I don't know where she got it, but it's funny. But um, and that's where I got my was 61 or 60 um, Chevy Impala convertible, and it was real crazy. I mean, it needed a lot of work. It wasn't perfect when I got it. The top was crap. I got a new top through JC Whitney catalog. Um, got uh, put new interior out of another one and put a big motor in it. I think knowing me, it was probably a 396. Um, I think I kept that one an automatic because it was a nice cruiser. Um, and but I ended up getting a red interior for that car, and out of one of the cars from the junkyard came in, it had a red interior in it, and it looked so good, that interior. And end up having it painted white. Um, that was a beautiful car. That of all crazy things. um, I was in San Francisco for some reason or another, and I knew I was there, but I ain't gonna tell you guys. And I put it in park and got out, and I heard a click when I stepped out, and I turned around and looked at the car, like what the heck, is that? And that sucker took off, and it just went straight through all the traffic. I mean, I was scared to death it was going to hit somebody or somebody was going to hit it, but it didn't. It went straight on through, and it crashed right through the barrier, right into the bay. I'm standing, I don't know, half mile, quarter mile away, quite a ways away. There's no way in hell I was going to catch it. It went right through the guardrail and right into the bay. I just kind of walked away. Oop, that wasn't my car. I don't know where that car came from. Yeah, kind of one of those little things. Another time, I had a the old Oldsmobile Rockets. I want to say it was a '66. Another nice car, powerful little car. Well, not really a little car, but it was a powerful little car. And I was down in Southern California for some reason or another, and I didn't have my license. And these cop whipped behind me and flicked his lights on. Well, I mean, it's flat. There's no place to go. You got, I couldn't outrun them. I mean, I probably could have if I would have really, but I did anyways, but not the conventional way. I took off across the artichoke fields in that thing, just hauling ass. And I come to the other side of the field, and there's a drainage ditch right there. Man, I hit that sucker so hard. The cop got stuck out in the field. It really messed up the front end of that car, but I got it out of there and into a friend's garage. So I didn't get in trouble for it, But I had my friend, sell it, whatever you want to can get out of it, Just don't do it right away. Cops are looking for it. Because I was a kid. What do you do? But those are just a couple of the meat-headed things I did. Another time, I had I think a '64 Riviera. Had clamshell headlights. Had the little 426 nailhead in it, or not nailhead. Maybe it was called a nailhead, and automatic. And those Rivieras, they're built for comfort. And I'm coming through Crescent City, California, and I'm just, there's nobody on the road. It's late at night. I'm trying to get home, and just boogieing down the road. And if you guys are familiar with Crescent City, there's about a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles straight stretch. Coming as soon as you get out of Crescent City, come around the corner, and it's just straight. And I was just getting on it. And I'm almost to the end of the straight stretch. And I look in the rearview mirror and I see the bubblegum machine going off. And I knew he was there. I was the only one on the road, So I just put the pedal to the metal. And he comes hauling up behind me. I can't remember what he was driving, but it had to have been fast because I had that car pretty much nailed to the floor. And I come around and I thought, well, I just zip into prehistoric Trees and Mysteries, and where Paul Bunyan stood. Anyways, I come flying through there. I thought it was an in and out, but it turns out it wasn't. On the far end of the parking lot, there's a curb. So I did what I thought was best, and I just dropped it in the second gear and hammered it. And it kind of lifted that front end enough to where when I hit the that curb, it kind of just bounced me over. And I hit the grass sideways, and then I hit the pavement, and I just pinned it. And I'm looking in the rearview mirror to see what happened to him, because I figured he'd stop, but he didn't. He hit that thing and just ripped the front end right out of that car. I'm seeing it hit, boom, bunch of stuff flying in the air by his headlights, and then he hit the pavement, and a streak of sparks right across the road off into the ditch. Man, that was okay. So, and there's a in between Eureka and Crescent City, there's a bypass that took you over the mountains into a little town, and then back up into another little town, and then you're on the highway on the way to the house, right? And like I said, it was late at night. I got in just about daylight, and I just pulled the Riviera right into the barn, closed the door, left it, and um, I did end up doing some damage to the car. It took me a while to fix it, but the local sheriff there, he come up and he asked me, about it. I said, "Why are you talking to me about it?" I said, "Where did this happen at?" And he told me. I said, "I have no reason to be up there." I mean, he goes, he goes, "Well, according to the officer, it sustained a lot of damage." I said, "Okay." I said, "What do you want?" I said, "Mine's out in the barn if you want to look at it." And so we go out there and open the barn door, and I let him look at it, and he looked underneath it, eyeballing it and all that. There's nothing wrong with the front end. I didn't fix it yet. Matter of fact, I wasn't even aware yet of the problem. And see, I mean, it's I got no reason to be up in that neck of the woods, and there's no damage to my car. So well, he goes, they're looking for this guy. He created a lot of damage and put an officer's life at risk. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't do it. And so I got out of that one. But I didn't drive the Riviera that much. Matter of fact, I think I sold it soon after that. And because those were always, it was like the Chevelles, Malibus, the Impalas, those cars were always in demand. I mean, we got rid of quite a few of the 55, 6, 7s, all the way, down into the, late 40s, cars. Most of those old cars like that, the real old ones, were already at the wrecking yard there. And that reminds me. There's this old boy that lived up on the hill, and he ran cattle. And his wife had passed away, and but he'd come down to the place. Even another one drove the old rigs. He thought anything made from 60 on was junk. So he was a pretty regular customer coming in, because I don't know if he had a lot of money, but he always come in and want to part off one of the old trucks down in there, or one of the old cars. And so go right ahead. And one day I'm working on something in the shop there, and he comes up and he goes, he goes, "Can you weld the door for me?" I said, "Yeah." I said, if you need a door that bad, I'm sure we have one down there. He goes, "Oh no, I just need one welded." I said, okay, yeah, bring it in. We'll weld it up. So he brings it in. It's a cab of a truck. I'm not, I think it was an international oddball year, international. And cab was just beat to hell, and I'm looking at this and, it's only got one door on it. What do you want done with it? I'm stumped. Okay. I mean, and he goes, I need this door welded shut. Okay. So I get the welder out and, I'm talking to him while I'm welding. I said, well, what's this for? He says, oh, it's for my old horse. And okay, his old horse, you know, he was an old horse, and but he was crazy, and um, he called him Twinkle Toes. I had to see it. I mean, he told me the stories, and there at that day, but I had to see it for myself. That was something I had to see. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I, I anyways, he called his horse Twinkle Toes because I swear to God, you could watch that horse get up on the tip of his hooves and creep. And he had all the cows in the field creeped out. I mean, because he'd come up, get by a cow, sometimes he wouldn't do anything. Sometimes he'd just up on his toes. And when that happened, the cows would just freak, and he'd run them and chase them and run them. And he'd finally run one into the cab of this truck. And then he'd proceed to have his way with it. And I'll tell you, man, it didn't matter to him. It was a cow, a cow or a bull. He didn't care. And it was the funniest thing. I mean, if we had camcorders back then, man, it was, wow. I mean, the cow, he into the cab of that truck and just going nuts. Because old Henry's doing what he's doing. Twinkle Toes there. Man, and I'll tell you what, it was one of the most hilarious things I ever witnessed. I mean, watching that horse corral and what was craziest thing is this cab of this truck, was pretty much in the middle of the field, and it didn't have a floor in it, so when he'd mount the cab, kind of, sort of speak, the critter inside was bucking, digging, trying to get out. And that's why I had to weld the door on, because one of the cows ripped the door off. And since it was Twinkle Toes, well, Henry had to, he had to keep the cab out there in the field. It was hilarious, though. And that was just kind of the kooky people we had, in the area. And it was entertaining, to say the least. And I think that's about all I got for now on that. So I think I'll end it there. You guys have a good day. God bless you.